So where did you first meet Liam? Well, was that in London? Was it?
Well, we know she's a female because she's flat underneath. We did a Paul Heaton album in there, especially when stupid Boris got it and they used it. I just like, yeah, we supported The Who there, so we played there 3 times. But I also didn't expect it was going to be as big as it has been either, because you know.
Yes, people, welcome back to the next episode of Yackaholics. In today's episode, I'm interviewing Christian Madden. This guy has had humble beginnings in Burnley as a keyboard player. He's passionate about keys and organs and, you know, pianos, all things keys. And he's gone from playing in local bands to playing in the Hollywood Bowl 3 times. He's supported The Who, he's worked with Paul Heaton from Beautiful South, he is now working with Liam Gallagher, but this guy has a full story before that. He's been on a real journey with his music, he's an amazing guy. So please, before we get into it, subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon, and let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Christian Madden. Let's go. So, Christian Madden, thanks for having us back again after the sound issues of yesterday.
Yep.
It was just one of them. It is what it is.
Quite all right.
So we'll start off like we did yesterday. Growing up in Burnley, we knew some of the same characters.
We did.
Yeah.
I grew up on Kibble Bank.
Yeah, which is an area. That's right, isn't it? Is it up
Allsyke?
Allsyke area.
Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah.
My mum and dad are still there actually, and yeah. I suppose, we ran into mutual friends when I was hanging around with Mark Puttrell and then Pint Size.
Pint Size on bus station and
that
stuff.
Took me to Burnley Wood.
Yeah, to my neck of the woods, yeah.
We spent a lot of the time on the bus station, which I can't pretend did me any favours.
Yeah. Was that like a gang kind of a crew?
Yeah. We had there was a few gangs around, weren't there?
Yeah, there was, yeah.
But we were all right. We were at peace with the Burnley Wooders, I think.
Yeah, you were good with us. Yeah.
Pint Size was like an envoy between us. I think everyone was a bit scared of Scott Park, weren't they?
Yeah, there were a few tough areas about, weren't there?
Yeah. But I was there for a while until I got into too much trouble.
Yeah.
Sometime while I was getting into trouble, I got grounded by my mum and dad. And during that period is when I bought my first Hammond organ, so that was quite instrumental. And then I started easing out of the hanging around drinking Kestrel Super on the streets thing, and got into first watching bands in pubs, like just covers bands and stuff, and then eventually I ended up joining my dad's in particular. And
so was you just got into practicing and it just took you away from it and you were spending longer and longer on the keyboard? Is that the way it worked?
Yeah, I know at some point that I really wanted to be doing it and playing on stage. The first gig I actually ever did was at Padiham Town Hall. And me and Maz, I think Chris Manley, who was from Roughly, and his brother. So I think there were 4 of us. Mm-hmm. And we played about 5 or 6 covers, like mainly Doors tunes, I think, and some Tom Waits, to a very indifferent crowd of Padihmers. Like that couldn't have been like a worse time to be playing live music in front of people. Yeah. It were really, and like my mum and Adam Goddard's mum, who was running it, they actually took like lyric sheets out around the audience, like round these Padiham kids, to try and encourage them to sing along with one of the tunes. Which
that's a brave move, isn't it?
Yeah, they didn't do it. But that was it. That was my first tour, and then my next gigs were with my dad's band, and I just sort of had to get. I couldn't really play by the time I started gigging, and I just got dragged up to speed really quickly because you just have to. And so, yeah, I was doing tons of them, and then I went to Nelson and Colne College and met a whole group of younger musicians there who I still play with now, and I started gradually bringing them into my dad's band. And it was just like a sort of a sandbox for everybody to just play about in and sort of experiment. There's a set of covers that you're doing, but if you've learned some new lick or something, you can try it out on stage that weekend and see if you can really do it.
And who was your dad's influences? Who was he listening to and inspired
when
by?
we were growing up, he was always into he was into soul, and he was into, you know, big James Brown fan, and like Chicago, Blood, Sweat and Tears, any of those big bands from late 60s, 70s that had massive brass sections. And then he was into the Beatles. He got us all into the Beatles when we were kids. And then he had a heavy rock streak as well. He was into Deep Purple and all that.
So what was Chicago? Was that like soft rock? And
it was by the 80s, but when they started in 1968, they were called Chicago Transit Authority, and they were really good. You've got to forget about the Satara Karate Kid stuff and just get back.
The Karate Kid stuff.
Yeah, the early stuff is amazing. They had one of the best guitarists you've ever heard, really, Terry Kath, but he's famous for killing himself playing Russian roulette, but there's more to him than that. He was a mind-blowing player.
Oh, that's the way to go, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think he meant to.
He was playing a risky game,
yeah. Well, you know, I don't think he meant to die.
Yeah, I don't know. Have you seen the documentary on Rodriguez?
No. Nicky's watched it, my brother. He said he watched him at a few gigs as well. Apparently he was a proper piss pot when he came back out on tour.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. Wow.
I mean, that's
because I watched it and they were saying like, "Oh, with the new Bob Dylan," and I've listened to his lyrics, and his lyrics are amazing from my point of view. I think he was a great lyricist, and
how much has he done though? To be the new Bob Dylan, he's going to have to really churn out some stuff.
I agree. But I think they were saying his level of songwriting, kind of like the quality of it was really good. And I've listened to a lot of his metaphors and the way he puts it across, and I'm like, he was good. I'll
give him a do.
Yeah, I don't know if it knew Bob Dylan. Like, it's a big claim, that, isn't it?
There's always somebody who's the new Bob Dylan, and they never are.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. But he basically, you know, he had this thing where he was ripped off by his record label, who never gave him any money, and he'd sold nothing. And in South Africa during the apartheid, his music and its messages had just gone through the roof. So the way he come back out was, there was a musicologist who had heard that, this is what I'm relating to what you were just telling me about, that he killed himself on stage. Apparently he'd set himself on fire on stage.
And he hadn't?
No, it was all a myth.
All right.
And so this musicologist, he went to America to try and find out what had happened to Rodriguez and why he did it on stage. And this bloke literally just says, "That's not true, he lives over there." And he goes and knocks on this door, and this little face comes to the window, and then he gets taken to South Africa to play a gig. And when he gets there, he gets off the plane, and there's two limousines. And he's like, "Oh, there must be someone important on the plane." And they're like, "No, that's for you. Like, you're like Elvis over here." And then he goes to play his first gig, and it's in a massive stadium. And he's like, "What?" And then obviously it goes into all this getting ripped off his label. So so you should check that out.
I will do. It's an old story, that, isn't it? Ripped off by the label.
Yeah.
It's happened here and there.
So who's taught you the most about music directly? Would it be your dad or?
Directly, I would say Richard's dad. So we all went to Nelson and Colne College. I went to St Theodore's sixth form for a bit, and I was doing German geography and English literature. And I got about 2 months into it, and I was like, this is not my path. It's like, and my mate Chris Manley, he'd gone to Nelson and Colne, and I said, "Can I just join up there late?" And so he had a word with the head of music, Peter. So Peter Young, he was the head of music there, and he had just a really positive attitude to anybody who come in. He'd be like, "Yeah, you'll be all right, you'll be fine." I went in, played a bit for him. And then, so he was great as a teacher. Every interaction I had with him was brilliant. But then later, I ended up having lessons doing classical stuff with him. In my mid-20s, maybe, we were doing like Bach's preludes and fugues and stuff like that. And,
wow.
You know, I was never that good at any of it, but like, that expanded everything for me. I think we're talking about one person who's probably made more difference.
It's funny, innit? You need a certain kind of character to kind of push you through to a new level.
I had a teacher while I was at college. They had a keyboard teacher who used to come in and see me every week, Dave Jackson, and he, more than anything, he introduced me to like different players and stuff like that. And he was another massive one. And in my 30s, I had online lessons with a jazz organist from America called Tony Monaco, who was teaching me, you know, about jazz Hammond and left-hand bass and all that. And so that was another big, you know, there's different people at different points. I started on my own. It was quite dispiriting, actually, because when you, like, I'd had a few little keyboards that had all the auto rhythms on and all.
What, did you feel like you were just lonely and there were no one out there?
When I first played Hammond, I was like, oh, I actually can't play. And it was really depressing. And it took a bit to sort of like get anywhere with that. But it was hard then. There wasn't, pre-internet, like, there wasn't even a book about Hammond playing or anything. I think about 1997 a book came out and I got that had a few players in it and told you some albums to listen to, and it had a few bits and pieces about them. Gradually, like little things, something would come out every 5 years or something, and then suddenly now it's just like everybody who's ever had anything to say about it, it's all up there, you know.
So what about writing music? Have you always wrote? Have you wrote songs for a long time, or is it relatively new?
No, I mean, when I joined the Earlies, we sort of started. We wrote then, and I started writing without knowing I was writing, really, because I would sort of improvise, and Giles and John Mark, two of the other guys in it, they'd record me and they'd sample bits of what I've been doing and sort of, and I'd be like, oh, who's written this? And they're like, well, you have. Yeah. Which wasn't
On
true,
the spot.
because they'd sort of like, you know, they'd shaped it and that. And then so like, as that went on, then I started coming with ideas of like chord progressions and instrumentations and stuff like that. And then by the time second album came, I got a bit more into it. And so it's like as time goes on, I'm like...
When would that have been, when they were sampling your organs and
started about 97, 98, and then like the Earlies album got finished around 2003 and it came out 2004. So yeah, as time went on, I just sort of, they give me the confidence to think that my ideas are actually worth something, because it's like before that it was like people I would work with somebody who's actually just a full songwriter who comes in with a song and you just play on it, you know. And that was like me being part of the generating of ideas. And as time went on, I did more and more of that with different bands. And then I started doing my own solo stuff around, I think, maybe like 2015 or something like that. And then I started just releasing bits of instrumental albums.
When's your most creative time? For me, if I've got two different times, so if I write lyrics, I write usually late at night. Yeah. My brain decides to wake up and get into some deep shit before I go to bed. Yeah. Which, you know, don't help sleep. But producing beats, sampling and stuff, that's a daytime thing for me. When's your creative?
I've had both. When the kids were little, it were a late night thing. And I started just sort of like keeping a sort of, you know, pool of ideas. I'd just record, I'd just sit there and I'd do stuff like flick through albums or flick through YouTube until something just lodged, and then I'd just start playing. It might not be anything to do with the thing that I've been listening to, but I've just been trying to just make something go off, and then I'd just keep all these 30-second sort of samples of ideas and then come back to them like a year later and see if
Do you get any inspiration from outside of music?
I mean, I do, but it's not in as tangible a way of like, you know, I'm going to try and make a tune like that dress.
No, but I
think I'm always absorbing things from everywhere.
Yeah, because
in terms of times, like when the kids were little, it was always late at night, and in the last 5 years or so, certainly during COVID and all that, it was always really early in the morning. So I started getting up at 5, and there's something in that. I've got a really good mate, Kenny, he's an artist called King Creosote from Scotland. And somebody came, he's like one of the most prolific songwriters I've ever known. And his lyrics are amazing. And somebody came up to him once and said, like, where do you get ideas for lyrics? And he said, like, well, what time do you get up? And this guy's like, well, 8 o'clock. He's like, right, well, set your alarm for 7:30. It's like, keep a pen and pad next to your bed. Wake yourself up, and the minute you wake up, start writing in that book, and it doesn't matter what it is.
I'm going to try that.
But then he said, the key bit now, though, the next step, he said, don't look at it for 3 weeks.
Wow.
I said, then go back
Yeah.
You said you'll have loads of ideas for lyrics.
Because
there's something about your brain when you've just come round. There's something else going on.
Yeah,
you've not sat in the driving seat yet.
I'm going to try it. I'll report
you know.
back to you, Christian. How I've got on.
Give
with
it a
that.
do.
Yeah, I will. I mean,
you won't find a fully formed song there, but you'll find something that's not the way I normally think. It's all about getting outside of yourself, and that's
where I spend a lot of time looking for a new angle to come from, and maybe that's the key to seeing what comes up, and then like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that normally.
There's always that thing as well. A lot of people say you should give your subconscious something to work on overnight. So like if you're working on something late at night, leave it half finished. Leave it as the last thought in your head before you go to sleep, then wake up and crack straight into it first thing.
I'm liking these
ideas. Your subconscious is,
That's new to me. I like that. I spend a lot of time with patterns, mate. I'm quite obsessed with patterns. Yeah. So if I'm rapping, I look at it like tap dancing, me, because I think taps are a really short sound. So you can fit more of them in a bar, and you can literally dance. I look at my words as though they're dancing. So that might dictate my flow that I'm rapping and stuff like that.
Nice.
So that's where I get. And I heard something about Eminem saying that, he did the tune. I mean, you probably won't be into it, and I'm not so much into this one either. But he did the tune that goes, "I'm Slim Shady, yes, I'm the real Shady," and he based that on a chainsaw. Ring, 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 ring. And
amazing.
That's where he got the inspiration for that flow. And I love that.
I do like him, and I admire him.
He's very skilled.
Very skilled. That's excellent, because rhythm's a thing that's everywhere all the time, and you can, if you're in tune with that.
Yeah, you can pick it up from anywhere, and even take an inspiration from a pattern.
Yeah.
And now for a random story about a tortoise and a keyboard.
When we was wrapping it up yesterday, you told me a funny story about your tortoise. Well, you told me a couple of things. One, you told me about its shape and why it's shaped like that.
Well, we know she's a female because she's flat underneath. Is that what you're on about?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because the men are concave because they for mounting purposes. But yeah, so I think she was still a he then. I didn't know, but I didn't know where she was. But I was learning some tunes for the like.
So the tortoise just wanders around the house.
She's wandering around the house. She might wander in it, but Anyway, I went to play piano. I had my headphones on as well, and I thought the sustain pedal weren't working, and I was trying to play something, and I banged it down a couple of times, and then I looked, and she was under the sustain pedal. And I actually screamed, "No!" And anyway, she's all right. I didn't crack the shell or anything. I don't think I walloped it too hard, but.
Was there a moment of frustration where you put a bit more pressure down than you
Undoubtedly. Anyway. Evolution's kept those animals around for a long time, so she's survived and she's thrived. And it's a good, healthy looking shell. I haven't buggered it in any way. It's not flat or anything,
No dents.
No dents. Yeah. Looking good.
Anyway, so when you were doing improv on a keyboard, where does that take your mind? Are you off away in patterns, or are you like, what's the best way to put it? Are you get an idea and follow it? Do you get stuck and resort back to stuff?
Honestly, it can be all of them. And it's like on your best days, when it's at its very best, when you're absolutely in a flow state, it's playing itself. And you're just watching.
Yeah, that's the peculiar thing.
And on your worst days, you're thinking, well, I should try that. This isn't working. Oh, that sounded shit. Yeah. You can't do that. You should never try that.
Because when we're freestyling, rapping, we have this thing, like you say, it's almost like you're watching yourself and it's just coming out of you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really peculiar feeling. But then, like you say, on a bad day, I can feel myself wanting to say certain phrases and stuff, and like rescuing it. Whereas I shouldn't. I should just, make something out of it.
When it gets clunky, and it's when again, it's like if you're trying to impress as well, rather than like serving the music, And sometimes it really helps to study anybody who you consider to be a master, and with with music, it's really useful to look at like people's phrasing and phrase lengths and stuff, and you'll almost inevitably find that people's phrases, like the pieces that they're building something out of, are smaller than you thought, and you're always trying to do something lengthy, and there's always more space in it than you thought. People always used to say to me when I was younger, it's not what you put in, it's what you leave out, and it's like, I think it must have taken me till I was 40 odd to really understand that what that actually means, that you're actually playing the spaces as much as you're playing the notes, that the spaces, just like speaking, it's all just like speaking. You've always got to draw parallel to speech and conversation and the way you would...
So in rapping they say it's not where you put your words, it's where you don't. It's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's like,
it took me a long while to understand
there'll be somebody who comes along who densely packs something with lyrics and you're like, that's amazing, but it can also be quite exhausting to listen to, and you don't want to listen to a full album of it. And then you find yourself going back to people from the 80s and 90s who just did a sort of steady way, you know.
So Woody said when he's doing scratches on the turntable, he does question and answer.
Yeah.
So he'll make it sound like a question because it like lifts up at the end kind of thing tonally, and then he'll answer it and stuff like that. And he's one of them DJs who's not been scared to leave a gap, and almost let you think of your answer. And it's massively important.
I heard somebody say a couple of weeks ago that you should try as an exercise, if not for your full-on public performance, but you should try leaving as long as what you just did as a gap. You know, like, and it's hard to do.
Yeah,
it's a bit like filling silence in speech. You know. Everybody, it's hard for somebody to just be like, blah, blah.
And just leave it,
Just
it's
leave
an
it
art
hanging.
in itself,
Because I mean, I know the purpose of this is that we're talking to each other, so we're probably not going to leave it hanging. But, you know.
So tell me about the studios that you've worked in, because we talked briefly yesterday about, the main ones what I'd want to ask about, but you also named some others that you've been to. So which were your first studio where you was like a
Handley
bit...
Aerials, above Handley Aerials on Bardin Lane on the corner. So Danny and his dad had a studio there.
So this is in Burnley?
Across from the Duke of York pub. And they had a studio upstairs that they'd made themselves, and they were just starting to populate it with all sorts of like amazing old gear, like, and his dad he'd find old organs and stuff off loot, and he was an old TV engineer, so he could fix anything basically, just that kind of like adaptable knowledge that you can put into anything else. And so, we had Hammonds in there and Vox Continentals and Fender Rhodes, and then he'd get things like bits of tape echoes and loads of old pedals, loads of AC30 amps, and then the microphones as well. He had like an old Neumann U47. And he just kept getting more and more stuff and fixing it up. So we were able to make really amazing sounding recordings.
That's a bit of a treasure trove.
It was amazing.
For you, that, isn't it?
It was amazing. And we were always recording a tape, so we always ended up having to nail everything we did. So that was really good practice early on. And then around the same time, I got a job in Cowlin in a small studio making easy listening records all day, every day, just doing strings on acoustic moods. By Pete Wilczynski, a guitarist. I think they sold well in airports at the time, but I think I saw a CD of one of them once. My name was on them. And then I went in a few around. We did all the early stuff in one in Manchester. I was in and out of that place for years. We had free time in it. That was on Tariff Street in Manchester, underneath the School of Sound Recording. And then as time went on, just computers started getting better, and samplers started having more and more space in them, and you could do more and more of it just at home. And so we did, and we made most of that like just in Giles and John Mark's bedrooms. And then just trying to think, after that, like, I got a studio in Cone.
Your own place?
My mate Bruce had it, and he asked if I wanted to take it over. And it's the same thing. It always comes down to I needed somewhere to dump all my gear, so I went in there, and then we started recording things in there. We did a Paul Heaton album in there, which was good.
Is that from the guy from Beautiful South?
Yeah, and
so how did that come about? That's interesting.
a mate of mine played drums with him, and he was just looking for somewhere to record. And I think he likes the underdog. He likes,
Like keeps it earthy.
he likes plucky scrubbers. And he came up to Colne, and we took him in Weatherspoons, and he was like, "Yep, brilliant. Let's do the whole album." So, and it was shite, shambolic. Like I tried putting a ceiling in because there were officers upstairs who were complaining about the noise. So I tried putting like a ceiling underneath, like, and packing loads of rock wool above it, so that we could record all day with him. Because I'm not going to be able to say, "Oh, well, we can only start at 6 after all the officers have gone home." But then first day, this ceiling that I'd put in just fell in. First day, just shit everywhere. We'll try to prop it up with some sticks, and so we had to get this builder out to fix that again. But anyway, it was all right. We were in there for about 8 weeks or something like that.
So did you finish the project with Paul Heaton?
Yeah, we mixed it in Brixton. Mixed it. That meant me and him went to Weatherspoons in Brixton, and someone else mixed it. But we had a good laugh. And that's it. We did a few things in that studio. It was good. And I started recording my first solo album in there, but then me and my brother both moved over to Clitheroe, and I mean, it's like about 40 minutes to get to Colne from Clitheroe, and it suddenly wasn't convenient, and I was having to fill it with bands who were rehearsing and whatever, just like, "Here, you give us 50 quid, you give us 50 quid," or just trying to pay the rent for it every month. And I thought, this is actually just a massive drain on mental energy and time, organising.
Become a chore.
So then since then I've been in loads of big studios now because of Liam. So I've been in Abbey Road a few times, and Real World and Air, Rack. But not much in any of them really, because
still to have a look at them and
it's
do a
good
bit
to have a look. Yeah, but
history.
It's it's history, but it's not the most economical way of doing things anymore, and it's a shame. Because I think it's really good taking a band. The first time we did it with Liam, his album was near enough finished, but we'd got together as a band and we were rehearsing in that, and he just thought, why not have a day in Abbey Road? And he just thought of it as a sort of like a bit like a team building, like taking us all paintballing or something. So he had one tune left on album, and he was like, why don't we all go in and do that together? Wow. And it was just so everybody got into it, and it worked. It sort of solidified as a.
Which tune was that? Is it the?
It's
I think I've seen the footage. I think I've seen the video.
I Get By. I think it is off first album. I might be
right. I think I've seen it.
Yeah, it's I Get By.
So, what about your own album, Christian Madden and the Enemy Chorus? That's right.
Yeah, I did. So I've done 3 of my own now, and I did 2 of them where I just finished them. The day I finished them, I just stuck them on Bandcamp, and then just.
But this latest one's on vinyl.
Yeah, that's on vinyl, and my mate Tom Friend in Bristol's put it out. He's got a shop called Friendly Records down there, and a label of the same name, and I sort of sent it to him, and I was like, "Do you know anybody who can help me like get a bit of press for this?" Because I'd finished it already, and he said, "Well, I can help you, but we'd have to, you'd have to wait. You can't put it out today."
Yeah.
So we delayed it a bit, and he got like cover art sorted for me, and lettering, and he got it pressed up on translucent green vinyl, and
sounds great.
It looks good. It's I think.
What kind of music is it? What's your?
The organ instrumental,
funk
soul based stuff, but like I tend to, it's not. It's constructed more like a song. It's not like everybody, we're vamping in D and everybody take a solo. It's like there's not really any soloing as such. It's all written melodies and that. So it's more like I don't know. It's kind of there's a massive dose of Booker T and the MGs in there. But then just other things that are a bit more orchestrated, like I don't know. Maybe like Axelrod records or something like that from 60s, or I listened to them a lot. A lot of krautrock stuff went into it.
Is that David Axelrod? Is that?
Yeah.
Is it?
And then, there's not much stuff where people write instrumentals. It's usually like from the jazz school of like we might have a bit of a head and then we all take a solo. And all of mine are a bit more through composed really. So, yeah.
Let's check it out, people. So it's Friendly Records.
Yeah.
So you find that online easy enough.
You'll find that, and you'll find Christian Madden and the Enemy Chorus easy enough.
Yeah.
I have a website, christianmadden.co.uk, so you could go to that and find it all.
Yeah.
You know, pay me a visit. Pay me a visit on the web.
So we talked yesterday about that playing had become an escape during COVID as well, and you kind of you made it clear that you had to be doing this in these mental times.
Well, it wasn't so much that, but it was just like my wife and children were all like they sort of started making space for me to do it. I started doing it. And then they'd be like, "Oh, we're doing this," and then it's like, "Oh, hang on, you haven't had your practice yet." And everybody sort of gave me space to sort of like have an hour or whatever to do it, and it was important because I talked to so many people who hadn't done anything, you know,
during that time.
I just got pissed, and you know, I was doing the homeschooling thing. I didn't drink anything.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I
must have been doing homeschooling while I was pissed then, because I'm pissed a lot. That's affected his education.
I was trying to be like good at it, and then by the end I was just the guy who manages the printer, and get Shelton's pencils and stuff. And the teachers were doing all of it, but I tried for a bit, but like I didn't drink because it was like, I just thought. When nobody knew what it were or what it would do to you, I just thought I'm going to be as fit as I can be when this thing comes and gets me.
Yeah.
I thought, and especially when stupid Boris got it, and I was just looking at him like, look at that fat fucking idiot. He's dying because he's fat. Fuck him. So like, I thought I'm not going to have that happen to me. And so
Did it affect your music in any way that time? Did you come up with anything new, or was you?
I came up with loads of new stuff, actually. So probably that album, I did most of that during it. But the main thing were as well, at the start of it, when you didn't know how long it would be, but you knew that live music had it, I just made a really determined effort to sort of, I thought, I need to stay in love with music, whatever happens. So I like, I watched loads of music, I listened to loads of music, I read loads of biographies, and I just did anything that just kept the flame alive, really, and just reminded me about it. And then by the end of it, I can remember, like, we still weren't allowed to do anything, and the Euros were on, and like, that was trains full of Scots coming down, all singing shouting at each other on train, and I'm thinking, we're not allowed out yet, and you're gonna fuck it for us. But we just about got out in time, didn't we? Like,
yeah.
It's unbelievable that first. So summer 21, we were just like having to go to gigs and do COVID tests before we could do them, and I thought, this is unsustainable because someone's just going to get it and the whole thing's going to collapse.
Yeah.
Then we got to Leeds and Reading, and somebody just came up to me and put an armband on me, and I said, "What's that?" And they said, "Oh, that's just to say that you haven't got COVID." And I'm like, who says I am? So they'd all give up. They're all just sort of paying lip service to it by that point. Just get on with it.
So we touched earlier on you getting on board with Liam.
Yeah.
So how did that come about? Can you tell me that story?
I so back to the studio in Colne, and when I wanted to get rid of that, there's a few big items that I had no idea where to put. So there's me, Hammond and Leslie. There was the Fender Rhodes, and there was a plate reverb from the 60s, which is like about, I don't know, maybe about 10 foot long and about 5 foot tall. It's
a piece of equipment.
Yeah, and I didn't know what to do with that. And so I found a farmer in Barrow next to Clitheroe who had like a sort of a part of a barn that was just full of like, quad bikes and scooters and flipping helmets and fridges and all sorts of stuff, and like I stuck all this stuff in there in the middle of all this guy's shit his entire life, So and it was in there for about, maybe a year or something like that. And then I talked to my mate Matt, who was working at the Grand, and I asked if I could stick the stuff in there and they could use it whenever they wanted. So I did that. And then Joe Clegg, who's from Colne, he was the drummer for Ellie Goulding, and he was in the Grand, and he just asked whose stuff it was. And they said it's Christian Madden. So then he messaged me on Facebook and said, I've just seen that you're in Clitheroe, but we should have a brew sometime. Because I used to know him when he was like a teenager. And then about an hour later, Dan, who plays drums for Liam, got in touch with Joe and asked him if there's anybody who he knew who could play keyboards for that thing. So then when I sent my email address and that, they checked me out, and then they found out that I also played with a guy from Bolton, Simon Aldred, who was from a band called Cherry Ghost. And he was already writing for Liam at that point, so yeah, there was a couple of threads came together.
And it was like a space of an hour, wasn't it? Between
yeah, I think, Dan, about an hour. Yeah, it was just after I'd done the first one of my solo albums as well. So Joe had he messaged me, and then he'd just on my feed he'd seen that I'd put something out, so then he'd been listening to that, and then I was just fresh in his head when Dan rang him.
So where did you first meet Liam? Where, was that in London? Was it up here?
I went down, so they rang up, I was I was driving the kids round to school and all that, and they rang up and asked it. Yeah, I said, do I need to audition or something? And they said, no, not really, we're a bit fed up with that process, so we just need you to come down and see if you get on.
Yeah. And
I went down and met him in a Cafe Rouge in Highgate for a brew, and it was like about, it was in for about 5 minutes. He came in and then he went to the toilet or something, and his girlfriend Debbie was like, right, this was just to see if you get on, and you clearly do. We'd hardly spoken really, but they just sat down and said, right, you're going to be doing this. And I didn't quite believe it even at that point really, but I also didn't expect it was going to be as big as it has been either, because I've played with people before where it's like, oh, this guy used to be in a band, and you just you're on the sinking ship for their career, and it's like,
and this one's
it's gotten bigger and bigger all the time, and they were absolutely confident about what they were doing from the off.
Yeah, you'd said that they'd said about, we're going to do Nebworth, like it was just...
Yeah, he said that. He said that on the first meeting. He was just like, yeah, we'll be doing Nebworth. And I thought it was quite funny, and I thought, fair play to you, but I didn't honestly think
imagine
that
being
happened,
in that position,
he was right. He's
and I was at playing Nebworth.
It was like any other gig at the time, really. It's just when you look back at it and see footage of it and pictures of it and all that, and you're like,
I did that.
It's bigger than you actually thought at the time.
Yeah.
But you can't really get too swept away in these things while you're doing them.
It must be peculiar, like kind of eye-opening to see how he's idolised, stood in front of you, and there's all these people just like he's a god.
There's all this energy going in this one direction, and it's not coming at the rest of us at all. And like I always end up out in the audience at some point, like meeting somebody, or having a pint with somebody, and never.
They just don't know you were up there.
No, never. Wow. Just walk through it every time, Wow. Maybe at Nebworth there are about two or three people out of 80,000 a night might come up and say, "Are you out of the band?" But to say I'm directly behind him.
But they just look.
They're looking at me, but they're not seeing me.
It's weird, isn't it?
I'm fine with it though. It's good. And, like I was saying to you before, it's not for me. It's not my gig. It's not me that's famous. It's not me that was in Oasis. It's like, I'm just somebody who works on this project as it is, and it's like, it's just useful to sort of remember who you are and what your position is. Because.
What about the Hollywood Bowl? Did you tell me you performed at the Hollywood Bowl?
Yeah, we supported the Who there, so we played there 3 times, and that was like, in my head, like, I knew that should be a big deal because it's like
the Who.
Yeah, and it's like the Hollywood Bowl and the Doors at the Hollywood Bowl. I had that on video when I was a teenager. And, I mean, everybody played there. Beatles did it. And, but you just get there and it's... you look out a bit in the afternoon and you're like, oh wow, this is it. But when you come to a gig, you're just doing it, and it's because it's all your stuff and you're on stage and it's all laid out the same way. They all sort of blur into each other a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
It's
so there's like a familiar feeling because it's all your stuff set out.
I remember
the same,
me and Dan, the drummer, went out and got wrecked the night before, and then we were in some burger place across from the Hollywood Bowl, and he was just going like huffing and sighing, and I was like, oh man, I can't believe we've done this to ourselves again, just like the day before. You know, we're playing the Hollywood Bowl. What would people give to be doing this? And we've ruined it again. We sort of, I think we might.
Do you still have them wild days now? Do you still?
I mean, you know.
Do you like a drink here and there?
I do. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I like a drink.
It's well, you know, got to be careful glamorising these things on the internet, but you know.
Yeah, you like a drink here
it's
and there.
Fun.
Yeah, it is. I like it.
It's not like we're out killing babies. We're having fun.
What's it like being away from your family? Do you spend a long time away from your wife and your kids?
Yeah, it's. The longest has probably been, on the first album we did one stint that was about 6 weeks in one go. Which to me, it's like, so sometimes, like I've just done a 6 week block, but I came home for about 3 individual days in the middle of that. And for me, that's like coming up for air, getting to go back and see everybody and say hello.
Yeah.
As far as my wife's concerned, she would be a bit like, well, you're just away. You know, if you come back for a day. But as far as the effect to her is, it's not like it's useful for me to come back.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
But to me, that means for me the worst one was probably doing this 6 weeks. And so it always happens that like for the first 2 or 3 weeks or whatever on a big block, like I'm missing my family, and then as it comes towards the end of the tour, I start realising I'm about to miss all the band. You know.
Yeah. Thank God for video calls.
Yeah,
and
that's
stuff like
great.
that to see kids,
I mean, my children have been, you know, they've basically grown up with it now, and they're very resilient towards it. And also, like, when I'm actually here, I'm more here than anybody who does a normal job. Like, I'll be, you know. Sometimes it might be 6 months of just being around here and doing everything, taking them to everything that they go to and what have you. So.
And did you tell me that your kids were offering guest lists and stuff like that to people?
Yeah, they've started doing that a bit.
I love that.
Teachers and. Yeah,
my dad can get you tickets for Liam.
Even teachers that aren't that bothered, they might be like, yeah, he's all right, yeah. And then they're like...
That's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
I have to watch that, really. It's spiralling now it's secondary school as well. It's like, it's more people.
So, you're going to have to put a lid on it a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you're going back out with Liam soon, is it? Definitely maybe?
In about... What is it now? About 2 weeks or something like that. So that's we'll do about 3 weeks of rehearsing in London, and then it's arenas. So we're doing that new Co-op arena that I don't know if you saw.
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah.
That they've tried opening it and failed.
I've read something about it. Yeah.
Power issues. From Peter Kay. What's that like? One microphone.
Yeah, if they manage that, that's a bit.
Come on, lads.
Yeah, sorted out.
I hope they get it sorted. We've got 4 gigs there, so.
Yeah. Is it just a UK tour, or are you going out to other countries?
It's UK. I think there's a few festivals, but it's pretty much just UK. There's a trip to Malta at end of summer, and Budapest for one. Mainly. Does Ireland count as going abroad?
It does to me.
Oh well, we'll do Ireland.
If I'm on an aeroplane or a boat, I'm abroad.
Here we go.
We spoke yesterday about Spotify changing the world, didn't we? And that's we both feel the same way about how that's affected music.
Yeah, I mean, you know, these tech guys aren't remotely interested in music. It's like they feel like they've solved a sort of engineering conundrum. Like, how do we get music to people through streaming? And they think it's what, you know, they've provided a service and they ignore the fact that it rests on millions of hours of artistic labour, and it's like they've lifted the lid on this thing of where now every consumer on earth thinks that it's all right to pay 10 quid a month to get every recorded piece of music that's ever been made or ever will be made. They think 10 quid is a fair price for that. And then even like the way they divide up that money, it's like, you might release an album and then talk your mum into getting Spotify to listen to your album, and she might pay them 10 quid and she might only listen to your album.
Yeah.
That would mean that you would get 10 quid in any normal person's book, but they'll probably give about 5 quid to Taylor Swift, and, well, you won't get any of it. And now they've just changed it so that if you... is it under 1,000 monthly listeners or something, or under 1,000 streams you don't get paid? They've sort of raised the threshold of what you have to do to get paid.
And they've put the price up of Spotify and stuff as well.
Yeah, they're shitbags. And to think like that like Daniel Ek is richer than any musician that's ever lived. And to think
it
as
plays
well
on people's egos, doesn't it? Because they send almost like certificates saying, well done, you've been played in 23 countries and you've got so many views.
And you've got no money.
Yeah, and you've got no money.
And like, when they gave Joe Rogan 200 million for his podcast, and I don't have a problem with Joe Rogan or his podcast, but like, to think all that money was like, again, it was all off the backs of musicians. No one gets Spotify for podcasts because podcasts are free and you can listen to them anywhere. And to think that they thought they don't do any kind of artistic development, like for all the evil of labels, they signed acts and gave them money and time to experiment. Spotify has took all of that away and decided that they can give 200 million to somebody who's incredibly rich already.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like that. Yeah, it's never going to be right. No.
Back to the good stuff though. So, who's the dream? Who would you like to play? Like, music sat beside.
What play with?
Yeah, have you thought about that? Is there anybody like some old, blues funk musician where you thought, I'd just love to sit there with a keyboard and have a jam with him?
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of those kind of people. It's like, I had a bit of a weird sort of pinnacle career moment of when I did a gig with Steve Cropper out of Booker T and the MGs once. And it was like, I did a gig in Scotland with him, with the Animals, but I got to play all those Booker T tunes with that guitar, and it was like, that was one of those moments where you're like,
yeah,
wow. And then, so I think there'd be a few of those kind of people, but it's just...
how do people like Stevie Wonder and stuff sit on your head, or do you like rate them, or...?
I love Stevie Wonder. Again, I went through a phase probably about 17 to 19 of listening to nothing else every day,
So I know you like John Lord from
Deep Purple.
Deep Purple.
Yeah, I mean, Deep Purple are funny, like, because it's like, as you get older and listen to the lyrics are a bit knuckleheaded and like, but there's just something, it's just one of those meaty 70s rock bands, and he sort of really wrote the book on how to play rock organ, so I still love listening to his organ playing. There's a few other great British organists, like, Brian Auger's one. Rod Argent from Zombies. He's amazing. Still amazing. And then
what instrument do you think sit best with organ? What sounds good? Next, is it guitars?
Guitar. I mean, guitar, bass, and drums are brilliant, but it's only certain kinds of guitarists. It's got to be that kind of soulful playing. If you get people playing big-bodied, fuller sounding guitars, it sort of takes up the entire same sonic spectrum as the organ. So it's like you need the room that's left. So like someone like Steve Cropper was always playing on a Telecaster, and it's kind of high and thin, and they work together. So some stuff's better thought out than others,
I really like the stories about Spooner from Funk Brother, is it? Yeah.
Oh, Spooner Oldham. He's
from the Swampers. Sorry.
Yeah.
From the Swampers, weren't he? Was
Yeah,
the Muscle Shoals.
I've never watched that documentary, but I love the stuff that they make.
Well, there's a story in it about they got Aretha Franklin to come down to the studio, and it all seized up and nothing were happening. And it was like, this is Aretha Franklin, we should be able to produce something here. And they literally stuck, and then Spooner just finds a chord.
Yeah.
And then within minutes they've wrote Natural Woman.
All right.
And just because of his...
It won't be that tune.
I'm sure it was Natural
It's
Woman.
not, because Carole King wrote that.
Oh yeah, she did, didn't she? Which one is it then?
I think it'll be...
Yeah, that's Carole King, isn't it? Yeah. Tapestry Woman, isn't it?
Never Loved a Man, I reckon that you're probably talking about.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
I reckon. Yeah.
I've seen the footage of Aretha Franklin where Carole King's in the audience as well. It was for Obama.
Yeah.
And Aretha comes out singing it, and Carole King's just like, wow, you know.
Yeah.
She was amazing, Carole King. She just wrote everything.
Yeah, she was writing for ages before she had a crack at her own solo career. Like, she did so many of those 60s sort of girl group soul tunes. And
I only discovered a music. I mean, it was one of them where I'd heard the music but didn't realise a lot of it had come from her. And then once I was like, wow, she's prolific. She's done a lot. So, yeah. But yeah, when Aretha's working with Spooner, and then there was some magic happened there, all from the keys.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, those are the things, those house bands have always been the things that I've always wanted to be in, something like that. And when we got signed with the Earlies, we almost tried setting that up. We brought a few people along with us and tried doing albums alongside, producing for other people. Just try to have the same core band, just knocking stuff out. Because I like it when a label ends up having a sound that's born of having the same people in the same place.
Yeah, well, we mentioned
maybe
what they called, didn't we, yesterday? The
voices over the top.
The Funk Brothers and that from Motown.
Funk Brothers and
Hitsville,
Stax, and the Meters were down in New Orleans doing it, and there's loads of those kind of things all over America, because just groups of musicians got tied to certain buildings in certain places, gives them a sound, and it's just that work ethic of people being there day in, day out, knocking stuff out. Stax was amazing for it, because,
Again, there's a story about, I'm pretty sure it's What's Going On, the Motown tune.
Yeah.
And there's a story in the documentary, isn't there, where James Jamerson, the bass player.
All right. I've never seen that documentary.
Oh, mate, it's amazing. But there's a story in it, and he's saying about, they'd had some session bass player, and they weren't cutting the mustard, and James Jamerson were very fond of the alcohol, and they've got him out at the pub, and he's come back to Hitsville, and this guy, he said, look, you're not cutting it on bass, bring James in. He comes in staggering in, falls off his stool backwards, pissed, bleeding, passed me a guitar here, bass guitar, and laid it first time on his back, bass line for What's Going On. That's rock and roll.
I didn't know he was like that. I thought, I don't know anything about him, really.
Oh, he's one of my favourite people to read.
I suppose the other group, is the Wrecking Crew, who did all the Phil Spector stuff, and then went on.
I've not heard much about them. Educate me.
Well, they did all that sort of Ronettes, Righteous Brothers, all those kind of things, and then they all went on to do the Beach Boys records with Brian Wilson. They've done so much. It's like
the Wrecking Crew.
The Wrecking Crew. Hal Blaine was the drummer, and Carol Kay was on bass. Yeah, they're amazing.
I shall have a read.
You absolutely should.
Yeah, and I think we've about covered it there.
Covered again.
Yeah, we've done it all. So,
well,
thank you for having us.
Pleasure.
And I appreciate it. It's been amazing. I think we've nailed it here.
Okay, that's good.
Let's go.